Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Illumineers Quest podcast, where we talk everything Lorcana. I'm Zach, and today we have the special privilege of welcoming back YBreezy to the podcast as our special guest. He was gracious enough to jump in Jake's absence, and we are super lucky to have him. With that said, let's just jump into it, and thanks again, everybody, for listening. If you want to support the podcast, you can do so with the TCG Player affiliate link down below, and follow us on all our social platforms listed below as well. Thanks again for all the support, and let's get into the interview. All right, and YBreezy, welcome back to the show. Appreciate you jumping on here again, especially so quick. Didn't expect to have you back, but we actually, by popular demand, I had, no joke, quite a few people reach out and say we want him back. So you're back by popular demand.
Well, it's an honor to be back. I'm glad that you reach out and just said come on the show, and it's always a blast to be around these little shows. Just to chat. I don't understand why people want me. Honestly, I just yap about the dumbest things. I blew a hamstring on the show a couple of weeks ago trying to kick like Cusco. So I don't understand why people want my opinion on this game, but it's an honor, and let's just jump into it. There's a lot to talk about, I think.
Yeah, I if I remember correctly, last time you were on here, it was right before release, and now release has happened, and so we actually have gameplay / meta stuff to talk about / how things are starting to shape up. So yeah, I mean, I think the first thing big to talk about is that I've seen, and I say big to talk about, I don't know if it's big or not. I feel like it's in all of the social talk that I've seen is the perceived, and I'm saying perceived because that's the conversation to have, weakness of going first now.
Gotcha. Yeah, I've seen the discourse about it. I know a lot of people are like, well, it's like 64% win rate if you go first. And it should be, optimally you want it to be 50-50. But unfortunately, in any game, I would love to see the other card games going first rate, because I'm pretty sure if you play Yu-Gi-Oh, your turn one win rate is high as well, and dice roll does determine a lot, unfortunately. But at the same time, people like Zach Bivens, which I call him my goat, is saying yeah, no, you can definitely get by going second. And he talked about his tournament experience that he won the 1K in. He's like, I went second most of the time and it was still okay. Obviously it's an advantage, but with enough skill, I think you can kind of go through it. But 64% is a little alarming at the same time.
Yeah, and that's definitely one of the comments that from Zach that you just mentioned that really started to sway my opinion too, and start to just try to think my own mindset differently about it. Some of the online discussions that I had seen around it was, one, him, but two, it was also just how the meta's forming and people don't really understand how to play it, which I think obviously that's always going to happen too. Anytime things change and new things occur, anytime you have the slightest advantage that might get blown out of proportion, which I think we're seeing with some of those higher percentages. But the other thing is I think with some of the new cards like the Ursulas, like we've talked about, and Bare Necessities and all of the early game disruption cards, I think you have to play going second very differently than you would play going first. And so what I mean by that is if you're going second, you need to be very cognizant of that and go into your mulligan and go into your turns aware that you're going second. And I think I did a really poor job of that the first couple weeks, but after watching the Zach's videos and after watching a few of the other people talk and other conversations on it, it's really just changed my mindset. Do I think there's an advantage? Sure. I think there's still a big advantage, but I don't think it's near as drastic as I initially thought, just because I'm trying to do a better job of managing the way that I play the game versus just kind of getting bent out of shape that I'm going second and, letting it get to my head.
Right. I think that's the mulligan thing is very fascinating, because that does come up quite a bit, where it's there are some cards you rather see in your turn one or turn two if you go first. But, I mean, for example, the Emerald Amethyst deck that's kind of been doing well, not super meta, but the deck, the turn 2 and turn 1 is so important. But if you go first, you want to win the race as fast as possible. But if you're going second, you might want to have that Ursula as your turn 2, or something along the lines where you want to have a little bit more control or more knowledge. If you go second over turn 1, we're gonna just go full pedal to the metal race into 20. So I think that that's very important, and I think that's where the skill aspect comes in alongside with it. Is that like you have to be aware of what's happening, not just like, oh, let me get my good cards, let me run the script that I'm so familiar with what my deck does. But you have to kind of change that up if you're going second versus going first.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a perfect example, and I hate to put myself on in this light here, but I've been a dirty Ruby Amethyst player the past like week and a half probably, and
I have some takes on it. I have some takes on this Ruby Amethyst. I think it's going through like a Zuko-like arc, right? Where he's just like, the deck was just hated. Everyone's like, this is so broken. This is great. But now, with the shift of the meta, it's like, we're kind of... It's like that, oh, you're fine. You're not too expensive of a deck so people can play it. It's that, like... I don't know. I feel like it's turning a little bit of a lighter side just because like the meta is shifting and it's a budget-friendly deck. It's not terrible to play, like with other color combinations in the sense of like mirror matches are really like intricate. But if you have different color, if your opponent's playing a different color, it's interesting interactions and stuff like that. So I think it's set 3 is really making that deck. It's still a strong deck, but it's, I don't know, it's like a budget friendly option. I'm starting to kind of get warmed into the deck, and it's kind of interesting.
Okay. Well, I'll take that then. I'm very much a heroes guy, and so I don't like being the villain. And so if we can say that that we're turning to the light side here, then I'll definitely take it. Because, like I said, heroes all the way. But yeah. So like the main thing that since I've been playing that, the main thing that I've like changed is if I go first, then I try to keep a Teeth and Ambitions in my hand. And if I don't go first, especially if I'm playing Amber or Emerald, then I'm definitely mulliganing those Teeth away because chances are you've got a Bare Necessities or you've got a Ursula coming before you have the opportunity to play that. Whereas if you're going first, then you can most likely Teeth their first turn play and be in a good place, whether it be Pluto or Rafiki are both really good options or really good hopes for them to have played in Teeth. And so for anybody out there playing and kind of feeling the same, hesitation around that, that's what I would really recommend like looking into is the way that you want to change the way that you play. And to your point, the pace that you play, depending on, the deck that you're playing, but also if you're going first or second.
Oh, definitely. I think it's just so fascinating because like there's no side decking or anything, so you just get stuck with what you want. So now those options are gonna come up like, oh, which going second cards I would like to have versus not, and I think it's very fascinating. That adds into another layer of the deck prepping and knowing what to do. And I think that kind of always breaks down to just mastering this game is really difficult. And those little intricacies are very important, and learning how to manage is basically everything. But
yeah,
I'm not the best player, so like my takes are very silly. But I think it's important. Like, like people are now learning that dropping that turn 2 Ursula is not necessarily a turn 2 play.
Yeah,
I don't want to wait that out. Stuff like that are just so interesting to me, especially with how like simple the game is, but yet there's so much that you have to consider and think about if you want to like compete on a higher level.
Yeah, I completely agree. And the one of the biggest, I think, I don't want to say changes because it's not really a change, but like differences between this set and the other sets is like, in previous sets, if you saw an Amber Steel, you're pretty confident like it was Steel Song, and if you saw Ruby Amethyst, you knew it was a pretty hard ramp control, and if you saw like Blue Red, it was definitely Popsicle. Now I feel like there are so many different permutations within those colors that it's a lot harder to get a read. And so again, I think that there's probably that side of it. I'm going second as well. Whereas if you go first, you can set the tempo, you can set the pace, you can decide the moves that are going to be made, and your opponent has to kind of counter those. Where if you're going second, you have to counter your opponent's moves. And if you're not really familiar with their deck list or you don't know specifically what they're playing, then it makes it a lot more difficult to be ready to counter the moves with what you're inking and mulliganing, because it's just harder to decide, what's going to come next.
Yeah, definitely. It's the variety in the same ink combinations has been really cool to see, because like before that, Steel Song did the same thing Ruby Amethyst did the same thing. I mean, even Steel Sapphire, you did the same thing. Now it's changing. Emerald Steel, we saw discard. Now there's like 3 different variants you can play, which really enables players' skill to understand matchups quick, and that's really interesting. And that's, I think, very important in a game with a high skill gap.
Yep.
And it's just very cool to see this variety. Like you said, it's just, we don't if you don't know what your opponent's playing, you're in a huge disadvantage. And that's where kind of a better player really will start shining, which I really admire that this game is kind of leaning into that. I mean, kind of evolving into like skill heavy. Obviously, good cards are always going to be good, but it's that skill that really comes in clutch for that high end gameplay.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the thing that I learned that like really started to push my like gameplay to the next level really early on was that understanding of the game and understanding of the cards and understanding of the potential next steps. You know, I like I've watched some of these online streams of different tournaments, like the Zach Bivens videos we talked about, and some of the other creators that are out there, and like thinking, like listening to their thought process and going through it. I'm like, man, they really just think through like every different permutation of like what might come up and how to like deal with that. And so that's that mindset that you can really get in to take yourself to the next level. And, you know, there is a lot of, I mean, if you want to be at the peak of, you know, anything, truthfully, you have to like really devote yourself to it. And so it's crazy to see the amount of, you know, time and effort these guys put in to like understanding the game and understanding the meta and understanding the different, you know, I would imagine at that level too, like habits of certain players. You know, I would imagine that there's certain tendencies that different players have, and if you continue to play the same person over and over, you start to learn those tendencies, and so that you know would help you as well.
For sure, and those guys are playing with each other too, like for their like training and stuff like that. It's just like, you know, there's like teams that are forming. There's like people that shout out to Zepha. He does just like gauntlet runs where he plays a deck and he'll like have 10 games with a matchup over and over again, note what happened, kind of break down each game a little bit to understand what to do better moving forward, and like kind of create their own sample sizes. And that's kind of happening with other players that are super high end as well. And it's very fascinating. And if anyone that's listening to this are trying to like elevate their game, I cannot recommend watching those guys do their thing, because they're live all the time and they're playing the game, just kind of breaking down everything. And it's so important if you want to, like, if you're playing casually or just like doing a decent on your locals and you want to like see the intricacies, it's just so important. And yeah, it's very fascinating how the high end players are functioning in this game that's super brand new, but they're already firing on all cylinders, and it's super exciting to see.
Yeah. I mean, I think we're kind of hedging into this direction here. So, you know, talking about different decks and meta and everything. So, you know, we're like 2.5, 3 weeks in now to like the meta kind of shaping up. How are you feeling about everything? And what are your thoughts on like the way that this set is starting to shape up?
I'm really enjoying variety. I'm finally seeing variety, which is the healthiest thing you can do in a game. Yep. But I will say the big problem that we're kind of, it's not a problem because it's a controversial topic, but I do have my hot takes regarding this information. But the high end decks, which are topping events, are very steel heavy, right? You're playing Steel Song, you're playing Steel Amethyst with Jafar, even though that's not the win combo, it's a big part of it. Or you're playing Steel Emerald, which is like my personal pick, the one that I really enjoy. And then you have your Ruby Amethyst, your even Steel Sapphire is being played. So the problem that we're kind of running into is the pricing of certain steel cards. Yep. Which is a problem for some, because it's getting to a little bit of a ridiculous price point to get into those high end levels. But other than that, I think the meta has a lot of variety, but it is very steel forward, which I don't know if it's. I don't think it's a bad thing, because steel is just such a complementary color for every other strategy out there. And it will do well. Like Ruby Steel, you can play it. Ruby Amethyst, it tops events. Ruby Sapphire, it just won second place not too long ago. a Steel Song, and then we got Steel Emerald. So like it's variety, but it's also kind of creating a problem with Steel being a little too expensive to play.
Yeah, God, I wish I could quote the person correct. I can't remember who it was, but I saw somebody on Twitter online say, if you want to play, if you want to have a strong deck, you either play Ruby Amethyst or you pick your Steel combo of choice. And,
Yes.
and that's basically what it is, right? I mean, they're all of them are played very differently. Like if you think of the Amethyst Steel, pretty heavily focused on Jafar these days, is extremely differently played than the way that your Amber Steel is going to be played, or your Sapphire Steel, to your point. And so I agree. I think the most fun a game can be is when you have a lot of variation and you're not just continuing to pound the same deck time after time, because it just gets really dull and boring and there's no variety, and it becomes monotonous, I guess is a good way to put it. And so I'm in the same boat. I'm looking through like the top deck list right now and seeing like what the different ones are. And we have the Jafar deck, and we can dive into any of these in a little more detail and however you want. But we've got the Jafar deck, we've got the Steel Song deck that came in first place on one of the big tournaments recently. The Emerald, Amethyst, which you talked about from a tempo perspective. You still have like a little bit another one that finished in top 16 that was Emerald Amethyst with the Relentless Beast in there. You have Steel versions with the Relentless Beast in there. You have the Steel version that's more discard oriented with Bucky. And then you got like Sapphire Steel, and I think that pretty much rounds up, and then Ruby Amethyst, obviously, which I left out, but needs to always be in there. And so, yeah, I think it's just that's the most enjoyable thing that I've had thus far. Is one, I've kind of dabbled in all of them to try to, I think it helps you understand from like that player's perspective what they're going to play, but it also helps you just have more fun and have something new and fresh and cool. So. Yeah, I've had a ton of fun this far. I think the locations have been really, really, really fun to see how that's shifted the different play styles and the necessary counters to have to do so. But yeah, it's the different decks and the top side of the meta has been really fun to watch like progress over the past couple weeks.
For sure, and it's evolving. It's gonna evolve for a couple more weeks as well. I do believe, but seeing the variety is good. I think set 2 was kind of just. I mean, it wasn't it was just Ruby Amethyst show from the beginning to end. I know we had like a 2-week popsicle party time that was like phenomenal. Yeah, but I do think this chapter 3 is here to shift it. Make the game feel more complete. I know like set was 1 through 3 was like kind of a together deal, so I think we're finally having the complete game feel to it with the locations, like you said, and people are discovering new ways to use those cards. I know the Manor is probably like becoming a fan favorite right now within the last couple of weeks with the Sapphire, Ruby Sapphire deck that's kind of been brewing in the last couple of last week or so. So it's just a lot of options are kind of popping up, and in the high end we've seen variety, and that's just such a positive thing, because if we had another 3 months of Ruby Amethyst, I do genuinely worry that people like would not have as much as fun going to events, just because you know what you're signing up for. Right. No one wants to play 8 hours of the same game over and over again. As much as that mirror match is fascinating to watch, I love watching. It's like watching chess almost, because same things. You know what's happening. It's very intricate. There's small plays that makes or breaks the game. However, variety is important in the casual to semi-competitive level, and I think this set is offering that for all of us, and that's very exciting to see.
Yeah. So let me give you some sleeper here. So I have to pat myself on the back a little bit here, because when I think about I think there's 4 cards that are like kind of sleeper cards, but like extremely important / meta depending on your deck. And the first one is Merlin Crab. I think Crab had a little bit of a heyday in set 2, but I think with locations, we said on our episode last week that I think the Crab is probably the most important tool to take down locations, because it pumps up your big characters. It gives you another body on the board. With obviously the rest of the bounce package, you can continuously pump up other characters. And so I think the crab is fantastic. And I think if you're playing Ruby Amethyst, like it's an absolute must to have in there to help you deal with locations, because otherwise you're just going to get, kind of ran down by your opponent's locations and not being able to take them out. Even if you are doing a good job on character board control, you obviously have to consider locations now as well. So that was my first one.
Crab is coming. Crab is really, really strong. And I'm glad that it's getting added into it, because it got left out a bunch, and like I think it had a lot of potential. And now with locations, like you said, now the ways to get rid of it, because I think that's the only way Ruby Amethyst is getting rid of them, right? There's no Maui's and such, but
even Maui's not strong enough to take down anything alone. That's Queen's Castle is still 7 and RLS Legacy's 8, and then if you throw in the McManor at 9, like you have to have the +3 to take down the McManor in 1, and so Maui's Fishhook. Or Maui's Hook is in there as well with, some of those same sort of tendencies. And so I like both of them, but I think the crab is well overlooked because it was kind of just, on the lower realm of like playable in set 2. But I think, again, for players that are, considering wanting to play Ruby Amethyst in set 3, or maybe not even Ruby Amethyst, just Amethyst in general, I think if you're playing Amethyst, you have to consider crab to be able to pump up your foxes and pump up even like your 1 cost and 2 cost characters. If you throw in, the crab, that makes them have a lot more favorable trades. And so it's really cool to see those interactions that you can get with the crab. Then the second one, which again, I think saw a little bit of heyday in chapter 2, but is like really starting to see a revival, is Blue Fairy. And let me tell you, Blue Fairy might be top 4 annoying characters for me to play against.
So much draw.
Incredible value. The 2 cost evasive, if you don't have a way to deal with the evasive early on, then it's questing for 4 or 5 maybe before you can get to, a little bit more of a direct removal. But to your point, by that time, you've maybe shifted a Robin Hood on turn 3 and played a Jafar on turn 4 and played a Beast on turn 5, and you've drawn 3 or 4 cards off of it. And so the value is insane from Blue Fairy.
Mm-hmm. It's the Amethyst Bucky, I think. It's just like so much value off by just being on the board, and you just, because it doesn't like alter your game plan, right? It's just there to help you get more cards or just gain more value, and it's just such a good option. And steel, if you run steel, you're running so many Floodborns anyway, because it's just good card pile.
Yep.
And Blue Fairy is going to win you so many times. If you have 2 of them on the board, forget about it. Like, you're winning the game. Might as well just scoop.
Yes. Yeah. No. It's just to your point. I mean, you don't have to actively draw cards. With like Friends on the Other Side. I mean, that's the most staple card draw that we've seen throughout the history of Lorcana. You still have to actively do something to get that card draw from it, right? You have to sing the song, you have to hard cast it, whatever. You have to do something. With Blue Fairy, it's just passively getting you those cards, and so the value does just add up so much over time. If they don't have an early game counter, if they have to wait till a Madame Medusa or a Be Prepared or any type of hard casting removal like that, then you've already well outdone yourself and gotten all the value you needed from that, and can call it good after that.
Exactly. Yeah, definitely.
And then the next one I wanted to mention, which you already led into perfectly, is Bucky. I think Bucky definitely saw a lot more shine in chapter 2, but I think the strength additions to Emerald make Bucky that much better too.
Oh, Bucky, I mean, again, I'm biased, obviously.
Yeah,
but
fair.
Bucky is just a little demon. It's such a powerful card. It offers. I'm playing Emerald Steel, and it is just so much value that it just creates, and it stays on the board because it has ward.
Yeah.
And until you grab your sorted out of the game, that thing is gonna get you some sort of value, and that's why it's so good.
Yeah, I agree.
incredible option. Obviously, it's going to die to Tinkerbell when it shows up, but by the time that Tinkerbell shows up, you discard at least one or two cards, and the moment you do that, there's so much value just being generated. I'm not even like I'm not even counting the Floodborns you're playing because those cards are already just good cards again. So Bucky is just so versatile in Emerald. Even if you're not running the full discard package, just to have that card in your turn 2 alongside with your Ursula as your turn 2 option is so much value that you can generate early on alongside with all the Floodborns that you're already playing anyway.
Yeah, I don't think you need the discard package anymore. I think he's enough. And to your point, I think he's probably like a tick above Blue Fairy because Blue Fairy has the option to like get Teeth Ambition or get smashed or something along those lines, like early game if your opponent like really doesn't want to have to deal with it. Bucky's staying on the board until turn 4 at the earliest if you're shifting on Tink playing Steel. And if you're not shifting on Tink playing Steel, he's staying on till turn 7. Like, what other option do you have besides be prepared? Outside of there's obviously a grab your swords, but again, if you're not playing Steel, like there's nothing to deal with it. Like it's insane. It's so strong.
Lady Medusa can't get rid of it.
No.
Lady Tremaine might, but like that's so much more setup you got to do. It's so valuable, and I'm so glad that it's seeing a lot of play. Just purely because Emerald has just kind of became like from honestly one of the worst colors to one of the best colors, and Bucky's just like heart and soul of it at that early turn 2 spot, and it's inkable. Like, what else do you want out of it? Yeah,
I mean, and to your point on the fairy earlier about if you're playing 2 of them, if you're playing 2 Buckies, your opponent's gonna have a bad time. Like if you turn 2 Bucky, turn 3 Bucky, turn 4 Jafar. Like your opponent's probably out of cards.
Yeah,
I mean they just there's not a way to keep up with that. I mean, unless they really go slow and just say, okay, I'm only inking my first 3 turns, like right off the get go. Then it's so hard to be in a position to deal with. And again, I think that's why Steel's so strong. We talked about that earlier. From the higher level perspective of the meta, like Steel's important. Like you need tools to deal with characters like Blue Fairy, like Bucky, and they're by far and away the best way to do that.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's just so good, and like it's a promo card. I'm not like this is not a financial advice, but like get your promo foils for Bucky. It's like $2. It blinged that boy out. I think it's gonna go up in price just purely because how good the deck is, and people like foiling them out. Same with the same thing with Kit. Buy those promos.
Yeah, Kit's a fantastic one too. I think he's seeing a little bit of like a backstep now with some of the Ruby Amethyst play. If you're playing, like if I'm playing an Emerald, in a Ruby Amethyst deck, like I'm definitely mulliganing for my Snake Fox line so that I don't have to worry about Kit. But nonetheless, Kit is still incredible.
Kit is
in creating the tempo.
So when it's that matchup, you ink it. It's fine. No big deal.
Good point.
Like it's just such a good option because your turn 3 plays is also like a lot, depending if you have Morph on the board, stuff like that. So it's just, I don't know. The Emerald just got so many just the weapons in this set, and it's only it's just got so much better. And Kit is definitely one of the stars, especially against certain matchups that can really break their tempo.
Yeah, I think that again, the amount of like early game disruption in previous sets was so minimal. There was Smash, and like the songs were probably Strength of a Raging Fire and Let the Storm Rage On were probably the most like early game board disruption that you could have. There's just so many more tools now, and I think that's why we're seeing the meta shift into, I don't want to say aggressive heavy, but much more aggressively viable decks, because there's just so much more you can do to like keep yourself in that engine humming to get you to 20.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's just so many new cards, so many sleepers, so many good stuff, and it's very exciting, man. There's so many just the price has shifted significantly because of all the meta changes as well, which is something that I kind of care about, just purely because like collecting and stuff. But I don't know. It's been really fun to see what the meta is shifting into, and I think the steel meta is really causing a little bit of a problem. But
yeah, well, I agree, and you kind of mentioned earlier, and that's one of the last big things I wanted to talk about is the cost of all this stuff. Like, I just pulled it back up. I knew Beast was rising. Do you have, when was the last time you looked at Sad Beast's price?
Beast was 50 last time I checked.
Well, it is currently $59.95.
For
one Sad Beast.
Only going off.
I can't. My mind lit, like my eyes almost popped out of my head. I could not believe how high that card has gotten.
I mean, I know people are ripping set 2. I'm aware, but like just to hunt this guy, it's kind of worth it. Like, yeah, your enchanters are valuable, but like. And then your other legendaries are like $10 a pop, but like, golly. Just Sad Beast is only going to go up. It's only going to go up. Like, it's not going to... I don't see that card being a bad card ever, because it's one of the best... No. It might be the best card in the game. just purely because how much profit of just it's a guaranteed draw, and if you don't deal with it, it's unlimited draw. It's one of the best cards in the game. It's $60, and it's a problem because, as we mentioned, steel being like one of the most played options, it's a 4 of, and if you're not playing 4 of, you should. And it's just $240 for a playset is a little scary.
Yes, it is.
Steel is having this problem. Beast $60, Robin Hood $40, Tinkerbell about $15. That's super rare, and they're all 4 ofs. So if you do the math there, it's $240 for Beasts plus the $160 for your Robin Hoods. So we're at what, $400 for 8 cards.
Yeah. And
then you have your Tinkerbell at like $60 and Whole New Worlds at $15 as well. Give or take, little estimates there, but it's about that range. So what, like you're about to drop like 500s on the steel package alone. It's a little steep. I'm not even talking about the other color that we haven't decided what we're playing yet, right? Like if you're playing the Emerald, Ursula's like $40 right now.
Yep.
So good luck doing that as well. Which is a little problem. Right now, Emerald Steel is what I'm playing, and that deck is really, really expensive, but I got really lucky. I packed 4 Ursula, so we're doing great. But it is a little pricey. The deck alone, I'm going to talk about the deck specifically. That deck is about a $600 to $700 deck, which is expensive.
Yeah.
I won't lie.
I mean, obviously, I think we're going to have the same, like, overarching opinion. Like, we don't want that. Right. Ideally, you want all the cards to be accessible so that it's not, for people that, like, want to go to League and just want to, like, be able to play casually, but don't want to drop, $700 on a deck. But, like, how do you fix it? Because, I mean, it's a TCG. Like, I'm trying to think of, like, other games. And again, I've never played it, and so from like I don't have the full mindset, but I have the most experience with Pokemon, and I'm thinking like
Pokemon's cheap.
All their they have base versions of all cards, right? And so to get in and play the game, it's very cheap. It's when you start getting into the secret rares and the full arts and all that stuff and alternate arts where things like start to get really expensive. And so are they just not printing enough legendaries? Like, I don't want them to be, I don't want to pull legendary out of every pack. Like, that's not what I'm saying. But I think there has to be some middle ground, right?
It's tough. That's a tough conversation. And that's where I think my hot take really starts popping here. Is compared to other card games, that the Emerald Steel deck is significantly expensive. Yeah. Pokemon is a cheap game. However, the other two that I kind of want to focus is Yu-Gi-Oh! And Magic the Gathering. Like, for example, Yu-Gi-Oh! Is my background, so this is kind of where I'm going to speak from. Right now, it's a tier 0 format over there. It's chaos. People are not wanting to play it because the decks are super expensive. There's a card called Bonfire. It's basically, it's a 3 of in that deck that everyone's playing right now. No other way around it. You have to play 3 if you want to compete. That card is 75 to $80 right now, and you need 3 of. So,
Whew.
and the deck and the other cards, you're racking about $1,000 for that deck to play, and that's kind of the only deck that you're going to be able to see viable and consistent in a tier 0 format. So, and Magic the Gathering is the same thing. Good decks are like around the $500 to $800 range, and it's just kind of unfortunately common that happens in a lot of TCGs that cards get expensive because they're really, really good, and they happen to just print it on a rare end of the availability, which kind of sucks as well because now the other legendaries isn't as important. Like Sad Beast is $60, right? The next legendary for set 2 is like $12.
Yeah, that's insane.
So it's the demand being so high that's causing this problem. And unless they want to reprint everything to the ground, which I don't think they will, there's not much we can do unless the card becomes irrelevant. Like Robin Hood, 2 weeks when I sold my 2 Robin Hoods to a friend, I sold them at $20 a pop. It doubled, and it's just playability, right? People saw the play. It's just gonna happen. People want it. How much are you willing to spend? $40.
Yeah, I mean,
there's no way to fix it. I wish there was. The way they decided to do rarities are a little different than Pokemon, which Pokemon I think does the best job at like keeping everything playable on a cheap rate, because like all the meta decks are at most is $100, which I think how it should be. But unfortunately, Lorcana decided to do a different route with rarity systems, and that's why we're gonna just always have these expensive cards be really playable, and that's gonna stay that way, unfortunately. I wish there was a solution other than reprint them to hell, but I don't think they want to do that just purely because they, why? Yeah. There's no point.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I don't really want them to reprint it into, all could be either. I mean, I don't view this as an investment vehicle. Like, I'm obviously not getting into this for the investment, but if at some point 10 years down the line I want to get out of it, it would be nice to have some sort of value to recoup from it. But yeah, it's really unfortunate. I have a tidbit on your Robinhood line there. I have a friend at my local store that we play, and he bought 2 Robinhoods, I think, for $30 the night before they jumped up. And the unfortunate thing is the seller canceled his order because he was like, "Sorry, I can get $40 today, so I'm canceling your order." I mean, don't know the seller, obviously don't know who that was, but things like that happen too. And so that's just an unfortunate side of the price fluctuations that we've seen with these new decks and new cards coming out. But
it's gonna happen every set. Every set there's gonna be some cards that are just really, really good, and it's gonna sit around that $40 range that you always want to pack. And when you get your booster box, you're not gonna pack them. It's just it's just all TCGs. It happens with every TCG you're gonna run into. Pokemon is like the only big exception, I feel like, just because they do more of a collector heavy rare thing, which is good. Definitely. But this game decided they have the collector's options, but the playable cards happen to be really expensive. Like price comparing, you can open a booster box where you're guaranteed 4 to 5 legendaries, and pack 2 Hydras, which are like $3. Or you could pack an Ursula and a Robin Hood, make most of your money back. And it is like that for every game you're gonna play. Yeah. And it's just a little thing TCGs are always gonna do, and we're just gonna have to deal with it. But good decks are gonna be expensive. That's kind of my take on it. And it's just like, if you want to play it, unfortunately, basic supply and demand is going to be like other people also want to play it,
right?
And that caused the problem. It sucks, but there's nothing that we can do.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. And to your point on the booster boxes, I opened my last 2 on Wednesday, I think. And the first booster box, I got a Mickey, a Hydra, a Perdita, and God, I don't remember what the 5th one was, but it was pretty lackluster too. And then the second box, it was Jafar and Robin Hood and Jim Hawkins. And so it's like, Yeah, I mean, you can't go into that hoping to recoup your money. You just got to go in, if you need a good decent amount of cards, and I got a couple more because I still needed a decent amount. But I am very happy for you and your Ursula playset. I've opened 6 boxes and have one, so I have not had the Ursula luck, and so I'm looking at my steel build, and it's probably going to have to be an amethyst one because I don't really want to buy an Ursula playset. And that's very fair. Necessary these days. And so, yeah, that's kind of to be honest, I look at it a little bit on the fun side. I know that sounds kind of crazy, but it's like, okay, what do I have that I can kind of build here? And so it kind of forces me in to learn new ways of playing, because I can't just force myself into the most meta thing and be pretty good at it to be good. Like, I really have to learn the game and learn the different variations and everything. So
I really like that too. I mean, I try to just play set all the cards, so I can have options. But if I don't have the opportunity to do so, which last set I took me a long time to get that done, you just kind of end up doing what you have and what you have more of. And I think that's also really fun, just purely because you get to learn a specific deck that's probably tier 1.5 to 2, and you get to be good at it. And it's just always good to play something different. Which happens all the time, and I no one should buy a card buy $200 worth of cards if they just have other options. I really don't recommend, if they're playing it for fun and all that stuff, just don't buy it. It's fine, you don't have to spend that much money, but at the same time, it's fun to figure out what you got and what you want to play with. So it's I was gonna play the Jafar deck, and I packed no Jafars. I opened 6 boxes, no Jafars yet. So for me, I can't get the. Ended up buying the Jafars recently just because they're going down in price. But yeah, no, it's if I don't have it and if I can't play it just yet, I'll hold off on it and I'll play whatever I got, and that was my Emerald luck. So, and at the time, Ursula wasn't the top dog just yet. Jafar was. So
yeah,
it's been nice. I do want to build that steel amethyst and ruby amethyst options as well down the road. But
yeah, I'm looking at those Jafars too. I have this terrible habit every set of not knowing what I want to play and not having a good idea of how everything's going to shake out yet, and trading away stuff that's going to be good. And so I pulled one Jafar initially, and then I traded it away to a buddy because he knew that was what he wanted to play. And now I'm in the same boat as you. It's I kind of want to play that Jafar deck, but to your point, luckily they are coming down. I mean, they're only $17 right now, and so that's pretty reasonable in the whole scheme of things. And getting back on that blue fairy train with Jafar is insane. So yeah, but I think it's really healthy. I think that there's tons of options, as we said, kind of taking a step back to the initial talk here as we move on to the last topic here. Is the meta's really healthy. There's a ton of different options. You don't have to play the most meta thing ever. The deck that I've taken to League the last 2 weeks is a Perdita deck, and I'm 6-0. And I have done extremely well with a lot of the Perdita stuff that you can cook up there. And so you don't have to play the most meta thing ever, because it's not, an online tournament where everybody has everything and you have to have, the best cards ever. It's, go play what makes you happy, play what you have fun with, and play, obviously what you pull. So
yeah, absolutely. Especially if you're doing casual, who cares? It doesn't matter. Yeah, it truly doesn't matter. I mean, if you're competing, different story, but the competitive speech is completely different than your casual speech. If you're trying to compete and you have not an okay deck and you don't do well, it's just part of it. You gotta have the high end decks, and it's just unfortunate, but it is what it is. But if you're playing League, just do your thing. Just bring whatever you want. It doesn't matter. Have fun, and that's the beauty of this phenomenal game that we're all lucky to be a part of.
Okay, last topic, and I know we talked about this a little bit last time too, but we have the official release for the information for the set championship. Yeah, so have you seen the kind of the flyer, I guess you would call it, of everything? So it's exactly what we kind of knew going into this. So there's 2 mats. One says champion on it. One doesn't say champion, but it's for the runner up. So you have the distinction for the champion mat, which I guess I should have realized, but I don't recall ever seeing those variants. But obviously that makes sense. And then 4 of the enchanted promo Rockstar Stitch cards. And so all of that we kind of knew. The one kind of kicker that is new is that it says if you do not have 8 players show up to the event, then you must return the package and its contents to Ravensburger. And so
That's wild.
yes, and then the second piece of information would be no cash prizes are allowed. You can enhance prizes how you would like. I would imagine that means with other packs or other boosters or other playmats or sleeves or whatever else, other Lorcana accessories / cards you want to have at it. But I like that. I think this is very much like a purity for the winning, not a money thing. Right. I like both sides. Don't get me wrong. I think having a community around like the financial side of it and having really competitive money backed tournaments is cool. But I also think that for this specifically is really cool to just have it make the cards and the mats that much more enticing because that's what you're going for. No money involved.
Yeah, I agree, and also kind of kills. This is different than your official tournaments, I think. So that's why no cash prize feels right.
Yeah.
I do genuinely believe if they do the World Championships and stuff like that, we might not see cash prizing as well. But it's good that they're doing this just purely because the OP this Stitch thing is supposed to be introduction to competitive without having people that have been doing competitive card games kind of shark around, go to 30 different locations and just try to win as much as possible. Because they'll get rid of that crowd, which is really nice. And it also promotes just going to your locals ones that you've been going and just see if you can make it. Which is why the cash prize on this spectrum is good. That they're just no, don't do it. You can't do it. But I hope that they do cash prizing for bigger tournaments. Just because if you don't, then what are you giving away? And if it's just more cards, it's great. But a lot of people do travel to those bigger World Championship events, and it's just gonna make it harder for people to justify why they're going.
Yeah.
Which might be a problem. But for OP specifically, I am glad that they're going the route they did. I was early on in do cash prizes, and I still am in the bigger tournaments, but I think OP is a little bit different than your World Championship journey. We'll probably get more information down the road, but if they're going to do no cash prizes, they have to make other prizes than just one single card. And I hope we get more information on that.
Yeah, I would pretty much just echo everything you just said. I agree with it all wholeheartedly. The one last tidbit I just have to ask to see how your side of things is going on is the 8-player requirement going to be an issue in your area? Does your store have plenty of people normally?
So I go to 2 places. I go to I always shout them out, Leighton Gaming down in Orlando. Great people over there. Their locals are Saturday nights. And usually we average about, I haven't been in a while. Last time I went was last Saturday. I talked about it on Twitter about how it's been a while. But anyway, so they average about, I want to say 10 to 16 people, which is really nice. So I think we'll be lucky enough to keep that going, especially if this tournament happens. I think more people will show up just purely because they want to check it out.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people because pricing isn't too crazy. It's a couple of packs here and there. If there's more people, more packs, obviously. But just overall, I'll be okay personally. I do fear that for a lot more smaller towns that might be a problem, but 8 doesn't seem too unreasonable. And if there's not 8 people showing up to events, it's unfortunate, but that's just hard for LGSs to kind of keep that up in the first place.
Yeah, I would kind of agree. I think we usually have there's 2 in our areas, and there's one that I make it to all the time. And that one usually has about 8 players. But to your point, I think given the championship and the potential for promos and that sort of thing, I would imagine that everybody will come out, and given the 2-week window, I would think that there's 3 total in our area that go on. I would imagine that they're all not on the same day, and so it doesn't split the player base. But the one that I always go to has about 8. I think the other one usually has about 12. So I don't think it'll be an issue here either. But it is, to your point, kind of unfortunate for those stores or communities that can't support that. But at the same time, I also get like you don't really want just 4 people to show up and then everybody gets a promo because there's only 4 people that showed up.
That'll kind of kill that too. The only thing that I do not worry about, but like kind of, I don't like it, just because it's a little I don't know, it feels off, just because it says the prizes are set. It's a $35 entry. It said, right? It's something along the lines. Whatever the amount was, but the pricing doesn't grow if more people show up, and that's kind of a little frustrating, because like, what if 100 people show up? It's a lot of people. Granted, it won't happen, but what if it did? And now you just have 4 prizes for a 100-person tournament that entered X amount of money in there. It just feels a little. I feel like there needs to be some sort of like. Obviously, the card shops are gonna like do more pricing, but from the official standpoint, I do think they kind of mentioned it. Is like, hey, if more people start showing up, these are more opportunities to give out. Like, give them the promo cards or whatever, just to have like pins, stuff like that, just to add into the price pool officially by them, rather than just be like, yeah, you can just do whatever, but no cash, by the way. Right. It just feels, I don't know, it just feels a little unfinished communication, and I'm assuming we're gonna get more, but like, I don't know, when I hear 4 prizes and it won't grow and everyone's there for to win the Stitch, if you get like 100 people, it should be able to be like, oh, okay, top 8 gets the card or something like that, where it's like so many people are there, you're gonna be there for 8 hours, and if you don't win anything, if you top 16 other than more packs, it just feels anticlimactic, I would say.
No, I'm in that same boat. I think, to your point, if you're trying, the integrity of like that you have to have 8 people makes sense, then it should also make sense to make it like the same type of competitiveness across all of the different stores. And so, to your point, if one store has 8 people show up, and and a store 20 minutes down the road has 50 people show up, the doling out of those prizes isn't as I don't want to call it fair, because obviously it's a skill-based game, but it isn't as meaningful as they're trying to make it seem, I guess. And so I think you're right. I think there should be a little bit more to come, and hopefully maybe they don't give out more Stitch promo cards, but maybe they say if you have over 16 people, you should throw in this many packs or this many boxes, and if you have over 25 people, this is what the prizing support should look like, just so that, to your point, people's time isn't taken advantage of. Like, everybody has the opportunity to at least come away with something.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, and I think they're gonna figure it out. I'm very hopeful that the Ravensburger knows what they're doing. They've been very positive about all the information and all the stuff. They've been kind of listening from the community and hoping to look changes down the road. So I'm hopeful. It's exciting. I'm looking forward to see who's gonna win the Stitches, who's gonna get the mats, who's gonna do well, and just very excited to see how the game evolves into something bigger and better.
Yeah, I think so as well, and I think that kind of wraps it up today. So is there anything else, anything you want to end on, or any final words that you have?
Final words, of course, a couple of things. I'm very glad that Bucky is very relevant into the meta. Anytime we get Emperor's New Groove into our meta, life is very, very good. It's just immediately better, and it's very exciting to just be playing this game, and I appreciate you having me on, and I do want to personally thank you while I'm on your show as well, to thank you for being on my show. After dark, so.
No problem, and as you have with us, if you ever want to have me back, or will ever have me back, please do, because I had a blast. And I guess I should have done this at the beginning, but for everybody still listening, shout out where everybody can find you.
If you're on Twitter, which has kind of been my home lately, or X, whatever you want to call it, you can find me at YBreezy. I am just a loud guy over there. I talk about random things. I write poems about how I can't pack an enchanted card. And every Tuesday and Thursdays, we run a little show that really sucks called Lorcana After Dark, where we have guests over. We talk about everything Lorcana, and sometimes we just talk about random things too. So if you want to check it out, you can find me at twitch.tv/YBreezy as well. That's where we go live from 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern Time for Lorcana After Dark. We're a month in now. It's been a crazy little journey, and people been watching it, and I don't know why. So
no, it's really fun. And I will say too, to all my listeners, if you want some good Lorcana entertainment and just fun time, I've watched probably 5 or 6 of them. You definitely need to check it out. It's a ton of fun, and all of the guests have been fantastic as well. So thanks again for coming on. And yeah, if you haven't checked out his show, please do on Twitch, because it's fantastic. And thanks everyone listening. We'll catch you next time.
Boom, baby.